So I just went and saw Avengers Endgame, and obviously this is one of the most anticipated movies of this year. And I have to say, I absolutely fucking loved it. This film was quite honestly a spectacle. Visually the film looked beautiful. There were a lot of really impressive sequences, tons of stuff happening on screen that all looked really well and all flowed really well. Of course, just like the first film, the quality of Thanos and the look and the realism of Thanos was marvelous. Most of the action was really good. There were quite a few unique scenes that worked really well. Other than that, a lot of the action did feel very standard Marvel and was kind of hard to follow. All around there were some really good performances. This is a film that's full of emotion and you can really feel the devastation and the sadness between these characters. These characters have built up so much emotion over the past few years, and across all these movies, all the characters have developed motivations that keep them going and help these characters throughout the film. Speaking of the characters, there were so many and it handled this so well. Something I admire about this film is the way that they were able to wrap up so many character arcs and stories that have been developing over the past decade. There really does feel like there are stakes in this movie, and that there is quite a lot of tension in you don't know who's gonna die, and it does work really well throughout the film. Like, anyone could die at any moment, and it's honestly one of the best parts about the film. The score worked really well in a lot of places. The use of the theme was really good at building tension. The way that the Avengers theme crescendos is really nice. It was used really well in this film at times of tension, at times of build-up, and it really helped bring together this feeling of spectacle that the film was going for. If I had to bring up one issue with the film, it probably would have to be the pacing. Just like the first Infinity War, there are quite a few scenes that I can imagine myself not exactly liking on a second viewing. But at no point was I ever bored. It was very interesting and went along pretty well, but it does kind of feel like there are some moments I definitely will be skipping over upon watching again. Now from here on, I'm going to be getting into spoiler territory. I really highly recommend you go watch this film before watching this segment, because I would honestly really recommend going in blind for this film. If you want to skip ahead past the spoilers and see my final ratings and thoughts, the time code is up on screen right now. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, spoiler time. So I have 2 words for this film, and I think you're going to like it. Hulk dabs. No, but all jokes aside, right from the beginning, the film subverts your expectations. Within the first 20 minutes of the film, Thanos is dead, and the film is actually set 5 years after the events of Infinity War. The film then becomes a time travel adventure, and when I first heard this, I thought that it was gonna be really detrimental to the film, and I thought that it was gonna suck, but it actually handled this really well. From the second they introduced the concept of time travel in the film, they explain that nothing that they do in the past will affect the future. It allows for much more free reign within the story and a much more exciting adventure, and there's a lot of really funny, unique sequences. The characters go back throughout like a lot of the films and events in previous years. They go back to 2012 New York and 2013 Asgard and all sorts of things, and it works really well for the film. There are also quite a lot of interesting ways that they showed the passage of time. 5 years has passed, so it's really interesting seeing how the world is and what it's like 5 years later. And finally, something that a lot of comic book fans like myself have been waiting for happened in the film. Captain America is able to lift Thor's hammer. And this makes a lot of sense. And, you know, it's happened in the comic book before, and it makes a lot of sense. Captain America is the most pure-hearted, worthy person in the entire MCU, and I think that it was such a good moment, and a lot of people in the cinema I was in actually started clapping and gasping because it was such a unique, miraculous moment. And of course, you can't really talk about this film without talking about the deaths. Out of the people that die in this film, there were 3 main deaths. There's the death of Black Widow. She sacrifices herself from the Soul Stone, and I think that it is such a good way to kind of round off this character's story. She's whole life has been dedicated to saving others, and I think that it was such a good kind of round off for her character. The other death was Thanos, which I think everyone saw coming, but not in the way that it happened. And that brings me to the final death of Tony Stark. Iron Man at the end of the film, uses the Infinity Stones to snap away Thanos' whole army. And this was a really powerful moment, and in doing so, Tony Stark ended up sacrificing himself to use the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, the death of Tony Stark was very, very powerful. It was such a good way to round this character's story arc off. And if you look at the contrast from the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, a selfish little scared billionaire, to what he is now, a courageous, heroic person who is willing to sacrifice himself for the fate of the universe. And it was so powerful and such a good way to round off this universe. The way that they brought back the characters that had been dusted in the past film was really good. And like I said, it subverted my expectation. I thought that the characters would be trapped in the Soul Stone, but it turns out no. Bruce Banner, who is now a half Hulk, half Bruce hybrid, uses the Infinity Stones to snap everyone back, and it was a really good way of bringing all these people back, and it made sense. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Avengers Endgame, and I have to say this is my favorite Marvel film out of all of them. And I give it a 8 out of 10.